Steve Finkelstein. He is founder and managing partner of Experience on Demand in St. Louis-based company. I'll step back and let Steve tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and tell us about your company.
So we started our company 13 years ago.
Okay.
And the why purpose, why did we start this, is that we believe that all small to mid-sized companies should have access to experience, affordable resources. Most of us came from the big consulting firms and charge a lot of dollars per hour. But the middle market and the small companies never had that experience. They never had access to those resources. So 12, 13 years ago, Frank Danzo and I founded this firm, and this is where we are.
Okay, so you've also written books.
I co-authored 2 books. Both books were co-authored with a tennis professional, and it's based on the analogy of business and sports. So the first book was called Play Smart to Win in Business, Leadership Lessons from Center Court to Corner Office. And the second book is called Execute to Win, How Leaders Get Results.
Right.
And so if you think about the analogy of sports, and we use the game of tennis, which Renee Vidal, who is the co-author with me, he wrote a book on how to win in tennis. And I'm reading the book, and it talks about be prepared, do you have the right racket, what's your strategy, what's your plan, keeping score. And I said, that's business. So we wrote 2 books, and it's all about how to play and how to win as a team and as a leader using the analogy of sports. So which also includes keeping score and having fun.
So you were a tennis player yourself, correct?
I was. I don't play anymore, but I was a B-level tennis player. I played a lot of competitive tennis. But after about 20 years of playing tennis and spending a lot more time traveling when I was a partner at Deloitte, I took up a sport I could do anywhere in the world, which was magic. So I'm a professional musician.
We're going to talk about that because, you know, when I first met you a few years ago, we had a great conversation and you did some magic. It just blew me away. Just the little things that really bring people in. So tell me, how did you get started in magic?
So when I was a teenager, my dad taught me a few magic tricks. And I saw how these magic tricks, besides keeping my mind creative, it also made people smile. And so my goal is to have 5 to 10 people smile a day, and to make kids smile and adults act like kids. Because as adults, it's amazing, and Terry could tell you, we're in a room with CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, and they're doing things that they never thought they would do. They're trying to solve creative puzzles. We're doing magic effects that they think it's not going to work, and it works because we use magic to illustrate the concepts of everything is possible.
Right.
So you don't think you can stick a needle through a balloon? I can make it possible. And so it's all about possibility thinking. Can you turn a $1 bill into 100? Yes. And we use that analogy. If you invest in planning, if you invest in project management, this is the reward you can get. So it's fun, it's interactive, it keeps people moving, but there's always this analogy. The analogy of what the effect is to driving business results.
Interesting. So I want to figure out how you turn, $1 into $100. So we got to teach me that. So we'll talk about that offline.
I can show you at the end.
That's impressive. We can make that happen and continue to turn that over and over again. That would be exciting. So this series that we're talking about is leadership. And there's a lot of principles you talked about just a little bit earlier. You talked about in your book on how leadership plays a role in everything that we do. But leadership, the word is a blinking word, and it means a lot to a lot of people. So tell me your definition of leadership.
So I believe a leader is somebody who has a vision and believes in the possibilities. Because the old cliche, I'll believe it when I see it, is really I'll see it when I believe it. A lot of people say, show me, that'll never work. All these killer phrases. Well, the reality is, if you don't have belief in the possibilities, things are not going to work.
Right.
And so a great leader can see those possibilities. A great leader isn't satisfied with good. They end up seeing the possibilities become great. And a great leader helps people believe in themselves more than they believe in themselves today. It's like encouraging people to have confidence, more confidence today. And that's really important because a lot of people feel they're stifled, that they can't do something. And all of us have a defining moment in our lives where somebody believed in us more than we believe in ourselves. And the other attribute of a great leader is really two. One is, and this is probably the number one, it's listening.
Okay.
A great leader doesn't have all the answers, but they have all the right questions. And they think about those questions because they listen. They listen to their customers, they listen to their people, and together they build the strong right answers. And there's always more than one right answer. The second thing is it's servant leadership. We're here as leaders to serve our employees and our customers. So if a customer asks me, what can I do to help? I'm always listening to their needs. When I work with employees, people that work for me, it's how can I help you be successful versus how can you help me be successful? It's I'm a servant to you. So I always ask the question, what can I do to help?
So we hear this whole thing at the top of the list of leadership, we hear listening. Why is it so hard to do?
Well, really, they use the old cliche, people have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so they can listen twice as much as they speak. We did a survey across 10,000 people on soft skills. And the number one soft skill, and we did this by gender, was active listening for men, not women. Women don't have that issue. Women are better listeners. Men jump to conclusions. It's the testosterone, whatever it is. It's like when you're talking to your wife, the question is, when do you give an answer to solve her problem? It's only when she asks. Because we need to learn to listen and not speak until we really understand what's going on. It's a Stephen Covey, Seek to Understand. So there's a book out called 100 Uses of Duct Tape.
Okay.
The 101st use, a new one, is zip it up.
Need to zip it up.
You have to listen. And a good exercise is we call active listening. Because if you and I talk and you want me to do something and I reflect back to what I think I heard you say, I better document that in 2 or 3 sentences or some way that we have confirmation. Because a lot of people leave a meeting and they think they know, but they don't really know.
So when we listen, sometimes we listen because we want to interject a point versus seeking to understand. And that can be difficult for people because you're looking for a way to answer a question versus understanding what the question is and even ask questions to even get a deeper understanding. So I think you're spot on and from a listening standpoint. And I know for me, my wife is a great listener. And I think that men, I think what you're saying is men, we sometimes want to solve it before we truly understand what the issues are.
And we're solving the wrong problem because we didn't listen.
Okay.
Men in general, but most leaders who think they know it all, that's their biggest weakness. We have to take the time to really understand what is the root cause, what are the issues. We need to learn to ask the right questions. And then together we can come up with the right answers. And great leaders always come up with more than one right answer. Then you can't make a mistake. But if we jump to conclusions, we're really not listening. And I see it all the time. I mean, as a business consultant and a business coach, when we sit down with CEOs and CFOs and presidents of companies, they ask us, well, why isn't this working? Why do I not get people to do what I'm telling them to do? Well, it's because you're telling them to do it and you're not listening. You're not listening to what the issues are. You're not listening to what they need.
Well, people say that leaders, I guess the expectation should have the answers, right? So how do you not take on that persona as a brand new leader? You're in a leadership role and people are looking at you for the answers. How do you not have the appetite or the urge to come off as though you know it all? How do you keep from doing that?
So one of the best, and this is from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yes, great.
There's 5 levels of leadership, and humility is the right level. So if you're a leader into a job and you think you're supposed to have all the right answers, you're wrong. Great leaders surround themselves with smart people, and they build a high-performance team with trust, accountability, and commitment, and together they come up with a solution. If people look for you for the right answer, it's interesting. We asked a question about delegation.
Okay.
Someone walks into your office and they say, Steve, I got this problem. What should I do? As a leader, you shouldn't answer the question. As a leader, you should teach them, so what do you think are some options? What do you think is the cause of the problem? Come back to me with some of your answers, because you may have a better answer than I do. You are closer to the problem. You are closer to that customer. And that's why, as leaders, if we can help our employees believe in themselves more than they do, to have the self-confidence. A lot of people say, I've never heard of that before. You've always told me the answer. So when we coach executives, we teach them to build a culture of thinkers.
Wow.
Because your employees are going to see, especially generation, okay? So baby boomers are looking at things way differently than millennials and Ys and Zs. You have to understand that your paradigms and your thought process may be different. You're not as current as everybody. But any leader that thinks they have all the right answers, and in a job, if they stand up and say, I'm the leader, I got the answers, they're the wrong person in the job.
Wrong person for the job. I think you hit on something, and I want to talk a little bit about the humility thing, because it is so hard once you become a leader to not be enticed to have just this sense of confidence and possibly even overconfidence. How do you avoid from allowing that to happen?
You build a strong team.
Okay.
So if we have a situation, we're putting in a new system, we're solving a problem, building a new product, whatever it may be, and we're successful, we win as a team. Okay. A good leader would never say, look what I did. Just look what we did. With humility, we did it together. And even if the leader had more the idea, or even if the leader contributed more, depending on the strength of their team, it's still we. Leadership is we, it's not I.
Okay. Let's transition a little bit, because we hear leader and we hear manager. What's the difference between leader and a manager?
It's interesting that so if you look at a continuum and there's 100%, everyone should sit down and say, what percent of my job is leadership and what percent of my job is management? It's kind of like a Venn diagram, but most leaders are more 80% leading, 20% managing. But when we do our workshops and we coach leaders, they're spending their time just the opposite. So it's questions like, as a leader, are you spending your time on your opportunities or your problems?
Okay.
Are you spending your time on activities or results? Are you spending your time developing your great employees or your problem employees? So when we get answers like, no, I'm solving problems, I'm spending time with my poor employees, they're focusing on fixing things, which is managing. Okay. Versus being proactive and preventing things. Leaders look forward. Okay? Leaders are looking to the future, and they're looking to achieve those results with the support of their team. But they have to be proactive. And if you spend your time solving problems and fixing things, there's a cost to that. The whirlwind of everyday's activities, the activities of the urgent versus the important, it's so easy to revert back. But leaders need that discipline. So a good question is, where do you spend your time?
Right.
And then it's, well, I don't have time to do this, this, and this, and why? Why can't you delegate and develop your people? That is a strategic question. Why don't leaders delegate more? Is it they don't believe the people can do it? Do they think they can do it better than their people? They don't know how to delegate. What are those reasons? And when leaders realize that they can create a culture of thinkers, a culture where people can solve their own problems, then they can spend more time on looking forward, not backwards. So when we coach and work on leadership, that 80-20, the Pareto principle, they end up shifting more from 20% leading and 80% managing. They flip it. A lot of leaders don't know how to manage their time. Mm-hmm. Time is a scarce resource. All of us have the same amount, but we can't save it. So great leaders know how to spend their time.
So how do you get from blurring the line between manager and leader? Because you talked about the 80-20 rule and flipping it, but sometimes that blurs so much. How do you become distinctive in leadership versus the manager piece? When do you turn one on and turn one off? Or do you?
You have to do both.
Okay.
But the way you do is with clarity. So if you define what are my expectations in my department, what are my roles and responsibilities, mm-hmm. what are the people that work for me, mm-hmm. and how do I measure success? So that if you're not keeping score, you're only practicing.
Wow.
We have to keep score. And what gets measured gets done, and what gets measured gets attention, and what gets measured gives clarity. Mm-hmm. And when you keep score, I use the game of bowling. You're not keeping score at the end of the game, okay? You're not waiting until you find out how did each of your people bowl or how did you bowl as a team. Uh-huh. You keep score frame by frame.
Right.
And after every frame, you go through a coaching session, a debrief session that says what worked well that I should continue doing, what did not do that I should start doing, and what's not working well I should stop doing. So if I give a clear expectation of you want to bowl at least a 180, you need 5 or 6 marks, spares or strikes, to bowl a 180. If the first frame you bowl 7 pins, what worked well that I should continue doing, start or stop doing? Mm-hmm. Well, what I should stop doing is throwing the damn balls too hard. Okay? What I should start doing is walking to the line slower so mm-hmm. I don't rush it.
Gotcha.
In the next frame, you get a spare, okay? And you go through the same exercise. The next frame, you get another spare. Well, what should I start, stop, continue doing? So every frame, every month, every week, we as leaders should learn from our experience. Okay. A great leader builds a learning organization. So imagine if you have a learning organization of a team of continuous learning, and you have a team of thinkers that solve problems. Mm-hmm. And they solve problems by not repeating the problems, by prevention. Mm-hmm. Like any sport, any team that wins, they figure it out together. And so that's what you need.
So it's humility, it's solving problems, it's getting understanding from the folks that work with you, it's building a high-performing team. And let me ask you this, are leaders born or are they developed?
I believe they're developed.
Okay, tell me why.
Because if there's certain attributes that are more physical and there's some that are mental. Okay. Some people are smarter in math, some people are smarter in English, some people are more public speaking, but there's traits of a leader you can learn.
Okay.
Now there's different levels of leadership, but if people start developing you, and this is really when it gets into the different genders and ethnicities and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. If you as a kid learn to believe in yourself, to build that self-confidence, mm-hmm. that your parent tells you you can do this, that when you fall down, you get back up. Mm-hmm. If you look at all the different people today, whether they're politicians, leaders in business, whatever it is, those great leaders are leaders that had other people that believed in them, that helped them develop, that they learned to ask the right questions. I mean, when you think about these attributes, you learn to ask the right questions, you learn to work as a team, you learn not to be arrogant because you're a servant leader, mm-hmm. and those type of things. These are skills you can learn. Now, when you get into, high energy, versus low energy. I mean, those type of things, that's our personalities.
Okay.
But you can be a low energy leader and still be a great leader. Great leaders have people follow them without a title.
Gotcha. What is the toughest thing about being a leader?
That a lot of people expect you to do it all yourself.
Wow.
It's what you said before.
Mm-hmm.
You're the leader of this company. You should have all the right answers.
And we don't.
And we don't.
Right.
But what we do have is the clarity of vision and the belief that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when I do strategic planning. We just finished a strategic plan for this big company.
Right.
The top 5 leaders of the company developed the vision, the clarity, and the belief in what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in their next level of 80 leaders, the next level down,
Mm-hmm.
across this company. And they said, we need you to help execute this plan. So leaders may have the vision. Of course, they're getting input by listening and market research and these things. But they're expecting as a team to execute and win. And collectively, it works. You can't do it by yourself. Again, I use the sport of analogy. Can a great quarterback win a game without the fullback, offense, defense?
Absolutely.
If a great quarterback has no one to block for him or her,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen?
You're not going to be successful.
Right.
Not going to be successful.
That's why when we wrote the books, when I co-authored the books with Renee Vidal,
Uh-huh.
it's all about using sporting analogy. It's the same. If you ever get into a situation, think about a sport.
So,
How do the sports win, regardless of whether it's basketball or baseball or even golf or tennis? They all tend to have common things to help them win. It's being prepared. It's learning from your mistakes. It's keeping score. It's being proactive. It's having the right tools to get your job done. When we look at employee engagement, how to build a high-performance culture,
okay.
and we use the Gallup 12 questions. Do you know what's expected of you on your job clearly and understand? Do you have the right tools and training to do your job?
Mm-hmm.
Servant leaders provide that information. If you don't know that, you're not going to be successful. It's interesting. Who gets in trouble when there's high turnover? Who's the blame when an employee's not performing? They blame the employee.
Right.
No, it's the leader. Leaders should be measured on how many people have you hired in the past 5 years? What's the performance level of those people? What's the retention level of those people? What's the average tenure of your organization? You as a leader own that success or failure of your people. Responsibility is at the top. But everyone's accountable for their sphere of influence. But you have to take responsibility of a leader of building that team. And if you start pointing fingers, you should be pointing them at yourself.
It's interesting. Everyone wants to be in a leadership role, but not everyone wants to lead.
Or they don't want to take the responsibility and accountability. A good example is a trait of a great leader is effective decision making. And they make the hard decisions. Nobody wants to give a bad performance review. Nobody wants to tell a person that they're fired or laid off. But as a leader, there's fun things you can do. You can celebrate success. You can have parties. But you have to make lots of decisions, including the hard decisions. If you lead right, you're not doing confrontation.
Right.
For example, when we teach people how to give effective feedback, what happens when a teacher calls and a parent answers the phone? What do they expect? A problem, right?
A problem, yes.
Because no news is good news. But when someone calls you, it's bad news, right? As leaders, you don't want to talk to your employees when it's only bad news. You don't want to wait every 6 months or every year to say you're not doing your job. You want to coach them every month, frame by frame. So the conversation.
So it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise when you do that.
It's so you have a conversation, not a confrontation.
Gotcha.
So if I sit down on a monthly basis with you, Ron, and I say, so Ron, you had a goal to do this. Tell me how you're doing. What can I do to help you? What worked well that got you moving towards that goal? What aren't you doing you should start doing? And what should you stop doing so you can reallocate time, energy, and effort to start doing? That's a conversation.
Right.
Versus 2 months later, Ron, you didn't get that done. What's wrong? Then it's confrontation. So if you provide an open culture where you listen, where you're there to support, and you have a conversation with those 3 questions, it works.
Great information, Steve. When you and I get together, we can talk all day. I really, really appreciate just your understanding of leadership, what it means, servant leadership. You talked a lot about that. So let's leave us with a nugget with servant leadership. How do I, or any of us who are listening right now, can become a better servant leader?
It's asking the question, what can I do to help you? Versus what can you do to help me? My success is based on your success.
Gotcha.
The philosophy in our company is we hire partners so that we can help those partners be successful. Mm-hmm. And I spend the time, and other senior partners spend the time to develop those partners. Because if you don't, we can't grow this firm by ourselves. Our success is through growing successful partners.
Excellent. Great nuggets, great wisdom from one of the top leaders in the area.
Now, do you have a dollar bill?
Before we go, I want to make sure that you show some magic. I'm not going to let you off the hook. Every time I see you, I want magic.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you have a dollar bill that you can give me?
Yes, I do.
Wait, can you see my dollar here?
I don't see it yet, but I'm pulling mine out, and yes, I see it. And I want to make sure that my dollar becomes $100 because I want to do something later on. Okay. I have my dollar right here.
Can you see my dollar?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so hold it like this.
Got it.
And then show the back.
There's the back.
Now remember what I said, believe in the possibilities?
Believe in the possibilities.
Fold it once.
Fold it once.
Fold it twice.
Fold it twice.
Squeeze it really hard.
Okay. What? I still have $1.
You didn't believe in the possibilities.
Well, you know what? I think I need to hang around you a little bit more so I can get some of those possibilities.
This has been a lot of fun.
It has been. Thank you so much for your time. We got to do it again. We really have to.
You let me know when.
You got it.
I appreciate it. Thanks
you
so
a lot.
much.
Guys, we've had Steve Finkelstein and just a great time with him. He runs a great company, and we're going to put some things in the link so you can link to his book, link to his organization, and we just thank you and we appreciate you. Come again next time.
I will be available. Thanks, Ron.